So you're building in the in the engineering of the artwork or the table, and it's not hard. You're just building in the ability for it to expand and contract on that axis.
Right. And you're cutting right through the pit.
We will, yeah. We'll cut right through the pith, and then that board will usually split in the drying process, and we'll have a quarter-sawn board on quarter-sawn board. So what he's saying is, when you get to the center of the log,
the pith.
and so there's all these subtleties in this, but the grain line. So when we get the center board, when we get the board right out of the very center where the pith, which is the center of those growth rings, comes in, you'll have the board will be like that, but the orientation of the grain lines will be vertical, perpendicular to the face, and that's a quarter-sawn board, and that has particular properties that are very, very useful.
Yes.
But that's a good rabbit hole on a Google search.
Yeah.
Quarter-sawn wood.
Yes.
But there's a lot of subtleties with the orientation of those grain lines.
Right.
That and there's all sorts of ray fleck and things like that come into play with different species of wood.
Yep.
But I won't bore you with it because you're standing in the sun. You probably want to get over there and get to the door prize and get something cold to drink.
More questions before we kind of.
The thickness is always that you cut. Is always consistent, or do you cut different thicknesses for different purposes?
I cut different things. So for something like this, it's big enough to do a countertop, table, desk, and you generally want a little more thickness on that. So I'm going to cut to 2 1/4. If it were a really bent or twisty log, I might cut to 3 or even 4 sometimes if it's aggressively bent, because trees want to move after the cutting process, and so if you get extra thickness, it kind of helps to minimize that a little bit. Hey, Bear. And for smaller trees, I will cut probably 1 1/4. That way, there's room to get a full 1-inch board after drying and planing. And then, if somebody comes in and they want something custom, and I've got the log, we can accommodate some of that. And if you have a tree that you want the lumber from, we can mill it for you, and we'll give you our opinion on what the thickness would be if we were cutting it. But if it's your tree and you're taking the lumber home, then we can cut whatever thickness you want to do. So it does vary. There's sort of like markers, like 1 1/4, 2 1/4, or in the wood world you'll say 5 1/4 and 9 1/4, and then 3 inches is one, and you want to cut a 1/4 inch over the final thickness. So 3 1/4, 4 1/4, that kind of thing.
Is that just for room for sanding down and doing finishing work?
Right,
Planing,
yeah. And as it dries, it will shrink a little bit because wood holds a ton of water. Ton of water. No.
There's
No.
no way it'll stay.
We do this type of stuff, that's the flitch that Paul was talking about earlier, where you stack it a certain way, and you put stickers, which are the little separators in there. And the idea is, the weight of the tree will kind of help it, at least the bottom ones, to stay mostly flat. But it's almost impossible to keep something perfectly flat while it dries.
Yeah, but the walnut is very, very well mannered that way. We will not see much warpage on these at all.
Yeah. When you cut them, the thinner you go, the more warpage you'll see
Yep.
over time.
Yep.
So, and in these flitches, you want to put the best ones on the bottom so they have the most weight, so they do stay the straightest.
And the widest ones
And
to
the
keep the
widest,
stack from
right,
falling over.
Right.
So what can we do for you? What is you need as a business that we can?
As a business, right now, spread the word. Absolutely. Let people know we're here. We're kind of just getting up and running again. So if you can let people know we're here, if you have any wood needs, let us know. That I really would say that's the biggest. If you see any logs come down in your yards, or if you know somebody who's got a log down, let us know. You never know when we'll want. If it's walnut, a lot of the time we will be willing to take that log.
Yep, we'll come pick it up.
That's the best.
Yeah, so you'll see logs falling down. You'll hear about someone's walnut tree fell and they don't know what to do with it. Well, we'll come get it. And also we do a lot of work for churches and charities.
Mm-hmm.
If you have if there's a need in your church, they need a table or they need a podium, and you have woodworkers in the church, well, send them our way. We might be able to donate some wood for that project.
Yes.
So we like to give back to the community because we're being so blessed by all these people bringing us logs. So.
Absolutely.
I may have missed a little bit of that conversation. One of the questions I had, do you have like an hourly rate? Not that you guys can say what it is, but somebody to bring logs here?
Well, we usually quote the job, but in our mind we have an hourly rate.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. And I'll go over that with you later.
Okay.
Yeah. It's expensive.
I know. It happens. Hey, I'm
Gotta
in
pay
this
for the
world,
mill.
man.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, that's an interesting question.
Good
How much
question.
did the mill cost?
This was under 20,000.
Yeah.
But the installation was quite a lot because it's electric. But we're not going to be dealing with the noise, and we're not going to be dealing with the fumes, and we're not going to be dealing with cleaning the air filter, changing the spark plug, that kind of stuff.
Fuel costs.
Right.
Yeah, and the fuel
right.
costs. Yeah, if diesel goes to $10 a gallon, which we live in such a crazy world, and we're not going to do. But electricity is, also expensive. But yeah.
What did I was going to ask? What's the run on? Is it like laundry meter? What's that?
Yeah, 240.
Yeah, it runs on the same thing as a dryer, 220. Yeah,
220.
yeah, it's a single phase 220, so it's the same thing your dryer's running. Yeah, so it's nothing fancy here.
And Wood-Mizer does sell single phase, double phase, triple phase. They sell lots of different options. So we did single phase because that's the whole barn is got single phase, but we're actually coming from the side of the house.
Yeah, and this is sort of our starter mill. If the business decides to grow, we'll need a new location, and we'll need something, a bigger saw maybe.
Yes.
But this is fine for might take 2 or 3 minutes to make a cut, but this tree took 85 years to grow, and look what the beauty. Look at that. That maybe is a couple hours work to cut that whole log.
Right.
So the speed isn't such an issue for us. We're more about the art and about the story behind the wood and so forth.
When you say a bigger mill, something longer, or why would you get something bigger?
Longer, because we can add to this as much as
That's
we
right.
want. I think stock mills come with 3 rail sections. I think that's correct. And we bought a 4th, so we can cut 24 feet, which, unless you're doing timber frame, or which is, house framing with large beams, you're not going to need to cut 24 feet generally.
Yeah.
So we have lots of space lengthwise. I'm actually not even sure if Wood-Mizer makes a wider mill.
Yeah, there are wider mills, like you can cut like a 60-inch log. This will cut a 44-inch log. But if you have a bigger motor and a bigger blade, your production rates are going to be much higher. So it would just fly through that log, and much quicker than he was going through it.
Right, so it's not as much the size, but if the business grows and we need to have more output, then we want to be able to do it a little bit quicker.
Yeah. And we're not really focused on growing the business. We're focused on, providing for the needs in the community and our own needs. Yeah. So, having lots of employees and a bigger saw is not really something we focus on right now.
So, number one, have needs. If I
That's
can
right.
say if I have a need, I'm more inclined.
Yeah.
Per needed basis.
Not want, need.
Yeah, wants and needs, right.
So before diesel, gas, electric, what did they use, 100 years ago? Just back and forth. And that's what this blade is doing. This blade is
No,
going like
it's
this?
so
It's
a
rotating.
Oh, it's rotating.
It's in a revolution, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they were using a pit saw. One guy would get down in the pit and one guy would be on top, and they'd move a blade back and forth.
Yeah, so it does this. Runs through there.
Okay, I thought it was going just back
I
and forth
couldn't
on
see
the
the top of it last time.
Yeah.
Right, so it is kind of cool to open it up.
Yeah.
It does get full of sawdust here and there. And that's partially on me when I didn't change the bucket out, because it doesn't have anywhere to go.
So it back
Sort of builds up in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they would have used a crosscut pull saw back in the day.
Back and forth,
And
oscillating.
then
yeah.
maybe before these were around, you'd use sort of a Alaskan mill setup, which is a chainsaw with a bar system on it where it keeps the top flat, and that chainsaw just rides along the top of the log. And those are pretty cool. I will say, you used to have a 6-foot chainsaw bar.
Yep.
It was a nice steel 880, the biggest production saw
We used 2 of
they
them, yeah.
made, and they'd take 2 motors, put it on either side, and then you could cut a 6-foot diameter log.
Wow.
It's a lot more work than this.
Yeah, we're
'Cause you gotta-
subcontracting the
You
bigger
gotta
logs
push it
now.
through, and it comes out with a much rougher cut, and you eat up a lot
Lighter
more
cut too,
material,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, you'll
yeah.
take 1/4 inch or more, and we're taking out about an 1/8 inch each
Yeah.
cut. So the Alaskan mill process it's a lot more work but it's less cost. You know, you can buy a chainsaw and a setup. It'll cost you $600, and then you can start milling. But then at that point, you also need a planer, and you need to get everything flat. You need other equipment. So, and I would say this is worth it. It's less grunt work, and you get a smoother product in the end anyway. So.
And we can have it on a residential lot, you know, in Nashville. You know, if you have a really big operation and making a lot of noise, you know. Yeah, I mean, I had my neighbor over here watching the demo, and he didn't even know the saw is here because you can't really hear it. It's not as loud as a table saw probably. So, yeah.
And what's you talked about character on the top, but in the center of it, there's some decay or?
Yeah, it's decay. There's some growth cracks. A lot of times trees, when they get past their maturity, when a tree like this gets to be about 70 years old, it really needs to be harvested. It's mature. The longer you wait, the more you'll get cavities in the middle. And a lot of these big trees that are 8-foot diameter, they'll be hollow in the middle.
You'll
And
lose like a foot worth of material out of the middle, so you're really only getting 7 feet. So you might as well cut it down when it's smaller.
So it's a lot like picking an apple. You want to pick it when it's ripe.
Yeah.
And same thing with timber. There's an art to managing timber forests and things like that. So.
I felt that a lot in the last storm with the wind. A bunch of trees knocked down in the area, and I saw them. They're all hollow
Yep.
in the middle. I was
Yep.
like, how do you test for that so they don't fall on your
Yeah.
house? You know, when it's time to get rid of them.
Yeah, well, you can tell. There's usually telltale signs. Like you see the holes on the side of this knot here, and a lot of the tree is telling you whether it's hollow in the inside. The bark will be gone on one side, and a skilled arborist. And we work a lot with Hutchinson Tree and some of the other tree companies, and they have arborists that know what to look for, and they know if a tree's hollowing out. And you don't want a hollow tree near your house because it could fall and do damage to your house and damage to your person. So.
What is kind of the lifespan? We say 70 years is when it's mature, and then past that it starts to rot.
It does vary depending on the quality of the soil and the shelter. If it's in a valley, in a fertile valley, that could be a lot more. So it really, or if you're mowing under it, every week there's a lawnmower packing that soil, that tree's going to be much more stressed and subject to disease. So there's a whole lot to it.
Trees are kind of, they grow in forests, so we tend to grow them decoratively.
Exactly.
Like 1 or 2, so that probably shortens that life.
And so so all the wind the tree will bear the brunt of all that wind instead of having the protection of the other trees. And then you have certain things with the soil. If you've got grass growing around, it's going to be a very compact soil that's hard to get. It'll be hard for that tree to get water. Yeah.
So here let's do one last thing before we do the raffle, and y'all can talk and hang around as much as you want. But I know it's hot out here, and so if y'all come over here, this is a perfect example of never knowing what you're going to get. So the beauty in this business is you can look at the outside of a tree and say, that's going to be awesome. Cut into it and it's garbage. Or you can look at the outside of a tree and say, that's going to be garbage. And you cut into it and it's the coolest thing you've ever seen. So there's a lot of mystery to it, and it kind of, I heard somebody I was telling about my job, and they said, wow, that's so boring. You do the same thing every day. And I was like,
No.
what are you talking about? It's amazing.
No,
So
it looks the same on the outside.
that's right. And so they'll look the same maybe, but on the inside, you never know what you're going to get. And it sort of breaks up the monotony of cutting every day. You're always expecting something new, and you never know what it'll be. So this is the Osage that we've talked about a little bit, hardest wood in North America. This stuff generally grows just kind of funky. They're funky logs. If you find a straight one, that is incredibly rare. They grow very twisted. This is the tree that drops those big green hedge apples. So you see them everywhere. They're everywhere.
Are they?
So
Can you cut those down with a chainsaw? Don't use a chainsaw, gum it all up.
It'll
because
dull
it's
the
so
blade.
hard, it'll dull the blade.
It won't gum it up. It'll dull the blade.
How do you cut it down?
Well, you just have to keep sharpening your blades. But it's a very light sharpening. It just takes the edge out because it has a lot of silica in the wood.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean these trees don't generally look like this. I'll say you see the outside of this, or it's just kind of really wavy and strange. The guy who cut this down, or the guy I got it from, told me the person that cut it down thought it was a palm tree when they first got to it.
Yeah.
And they were like, why is there a palm tree in the middle of Tennessee? And so I saw this log and I was like, I gotta know. I gotta know what the inside of that looks like. So I got it and I cut it as soon as I could. And if somebody will help me
Jonathan?
move these.
Oh, no, wait,
Let
Joe.
Jonathan
We got
do it.
someone.
So just set it straight down. So the inside of this, first off, it's super yellow when you cut into Osage. It's like it's almost blinding in the sun to cut it. And it's very heavy. If you want to set that sticker back on, you have this one come out right there.
What is that sort of brown caramelizing?
That brown is just
That's a water
just
stain.
water. Yeah,
Okay.
water, and then you'll see some of this dust kind of stayed on here from when we cut it. But here, let's move another. So this tree, I opened it up, and look at this. Do you see that grain structure?
Yeah.
Totally rippled, and it's called quilted. You don't really see a ton of that in the Osage. Osage doesn't really twist with the wind. I think that's where a lot of quilting comes from, is wind blowing a tree kind of twists it over time and you get these ripples. You don't really see this in Osage. So this is a very, very, very special board.
It's
right
very
here.
rare.
Very special
Yeah.
tree. Let's move one more. The one under this might be nice. I can't remember. Yeah.
You can really smell it more once you.
Yes,
Yeah.
you can. It has a very citrusy
Yeah,
smell.
the smells are intoxicating. Working with the cherry and the sassafras, I mean, you can almost just sob because you love the smells. It's that powerful.
Yeah, it's so this tree is just the perfect example of. I'm gonna grab these. You never know what you're gonna get. Never know. So it's pretty awesome.
In this particular case, are you stacking it when you have this longer area here to put it out and let it dry?
So well, I'm gonna fill this just like just like this. So I want to just
Yeah.
keep it there.
Gotcha.
And the reason for these are, a lot of it is to separate it so it can dry.
Right.
So it's still drying just fine right here. And Osage is one that the elements are not going to hurt it. You can't hurt it. It's so hard. So you'll see a lot of the Osage stacks out here don't have covers on the top, where all these other ones have like a pine cover or a tin cover. The Osage, we don't even bother covering it because the sunlight's not going to mess with it. Other boards, the sunlight will just kind of bake it, and it'll cause it to crack a little more. With the Osage, it doesn't matter. Now Osage is weird. It's a weird wood because it darkens up like crazy, and I don't really know of a way to not darken it.
No.
I haven't looked in too much to like epoxying the top, putting a resin coat on it.
I don't think there's a way to stop
But I
it.
think if it's in the sunlight, even with that coat, it's still going to darken. There's something about it. But this grain stays very visible when it's dark. And it actually becomes a cool.
Inside, would that affect it differently than using it out here?
Yeah.
It'll if it's inside, it will sort of go brown a lot slower. If it's out of, it's really about the sun.
Yeah.
So if it's right inside of a window, it'll turn brown. If it's out in the direct sunlight, like if you came back this afternoon and looked under those stickers, you'd see a light spot.
Yeah, I'm honestly, if I left it here for about an hour, you could tell the difference. You could tell.
It's like an apple when you bite into an apple.
Yeah, and you can see, we can go ahead and set these back and you can kind of see, well, you can see the edge too, where the sunlight kind of pokes in. You can tell that it's like here. You can tell it dark.
Watermarks on here. When you finish it, that comes off.
Oh yeah.
Not
That'll
very deep.
all sand out. No, it's not deep. And yeah, and you see this tree was kind of twisty. See that?
Yeah.
Even though I cut it 2 1/4, it still kind of wants to move. See that top one? So dark. You can see it's still a really cool color, and the grain still stays super visible, which is pretty important. They've got inside on the sink, there's a little frame of Osage around the sink next to cherry countertops, and if you know how dark cherry gets, the Osage frame is the same color, so it darkens up a lot. But it's a cool wood. It's one of those things that you don't see a lot of stuff made out of it, because a lot of people don't want their furniture to be bright yellow. Unless, in the 70s it might have been super popular, I don't know.
It's coming back.
That's right. But it does darken up. I would say the use for it mainly is tool handles. People make handles out of it. There's bows that people will make out of it
Yeah.
because it is very strong, but it's kind of flexible, so it'll absorb the shock of a hammer or something like that.
And it's good for making outdoor furniture that's rot-proof and theft-proof. So it won't rot.
And it's so heavy you can't steal it.
No one's going to run away with your Adirondack
That's
chair.
right.
It's the density is like steel. It's really
That's right.
intense.
When you cut through a tree, cut a tree down, it has rings. Those are like what, age rings?
Yeah.
Growth rings.
What growth rings? Are these kind of a growth ring too?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
are they-
Well,
But
yeah,
they're
that's
crooked
what
growth
the
rings.
grain- that's what the grain is. Now this tree just grew really weird. I mean, that's kind of why you get this. The only thing we posted some pictures on online forums and stuff and tried to get some expert out there who knew exactly what had happened, and everybody was like, I have no idea why that tree looks like that.
It's a total anomaly.
So the only thing we could come up with is that it was growing in some sort of valley where the wind was ripping through different directions constantly, and it just sort of over time grew like this as it went up, and that's why you see those twisting. But in all reality, we kind of have no idea why it grew that way, because for Osage, it's really strange.
It's a pretty big Osage. I mean, we have a lot in our yard, but they're maybe that
Well,
They get 4
you
foot,
see the,
5 foot diameter.
There's a few logs behind you on the ground back there that are
On the other
pretty
side of that
massive
stack.
Osage.
Wow.
Pretty, I mean, they grow
Oh, they can go really
huge.
big.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see it. And that's an older tree because it generally has really tight growth rings. So it grows slow, but it grows. They can get pretty darn big.
Was this coming from somewhere local?
Yeah, everything we have is local. We don't get foreign logs. I mean, I would say probably within an hour of here.
Yeah.
is everything we
Yeah,
get.
most of the stuff we get's going in a landfill. Yeah.
So, and that's a huge part of the business is
The ecology.
what do we do with other people's garbage? You know, people are going to throw away this beautiful product. They're going to burn it, throw it in a landfill. And so a lot of it is rescuing these trees that are just going to get burned or chipped or whatever and turning it into something beautiful.
So we got this log from a firewood producer, and he didn't want to make firewood out of this.
Right.
So it was going to be thrown away.
That's right. And actually, speaking of burning, you don't want, if you have a house with a wood burning stove, you don't want to burn a lot of Osage in it, because it will warp your cast iron wood burning stove because it burns so hot. And so if you're doing that constantly, it burns so hot and so long that you can use it for firewood, but you don't.
Campfires only.
That's right.
It
that's
sparks a lot, so it actually
does.
makes bad campfire wood.
Oh, wow.
But I have a fireplace insert. I can burn this all day and all night in my
certain-
insert because
certain
it's rated for it.
Yeah, certain fireplaces will do fine, but don't throw it in there unless you know, because it can warp your fireplace, which is pretty wild. Pretty wild to think about. All right, well, with that, we'll head over. We can do our little raffle.